Okay, great. Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for everyone joining. Good afternoon and welcome to our virtual meeting of Brampton's Audit Committee. We will begin meeting with the City Clerk calling the roll for attendance at today's meeting.
So members, I will call your name. Councillor Santos?
I'm here.
Councillor Willens is not here. Councillor Paleshi is not here. Councillor Bowman?
Hello?
Hi, Councillor Bowman, thank you. Councillor Medeiros is here. Councillor Singh?
Yep, I'm here.
Councillor Dillon is not here. Member Jane?
I'm here.
Thank you. And Member Zaman?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, you do have quorum. You have 6 members.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. Our next item is approval of the agenda. Does any member wish to add a business item to today's meeting? If so, please use the chat function to add your name to the speakers list. And my apologies because I'm not seeing.
Mr. Chair, no one has added their name to the speakers list right now. There is a request to speak to item 6.1 from Councillor Santos, but that's it at this point.
Okay, great. So as I see, there's no additions to the agenda. We have a motion moved by Councillor Santos to approve the agenda, that the agenda for the regular audit committee meeting of June 16th, 2020 be approved. Instead of seeking a recorded vote for this item, I will ask, is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Thank you. There are no objections, so the motion carries. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? Seeing none, the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes. Consent. Our next item, does any member wish to add an item to the consent motion today? If so, please use the chat function to add your name to speakers list. No. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Chair, we can just move on because there is no motion.
Okay.
There's no item.
Yeah. We have no delegations or presentation on today's agenda. Our next item is 6.1, and I see Councillor Santos, you're on the board. So I will go over to you. Hello, Councillor Santos.
Hi, sorry. Thank you. And I'm sorry about that. I just went through the South Fletcher's testing and did the test literally as we spoke.
Oh, good.
So I have a question about the internal audit charter, and I just would like staff to remind us again how we got to this point with the charter, and remind us what was chosen in the previous term in terms of the model, whether that was an internal model or the Auditor General model.
Is there anyone from staff that can respond?
If I may, Mr. Chair, it's Joe Pittari. Can I have Councillor Santos repeat the question, please?
The question was just about the how the update of the internal audit charter, how the update came to be. Just a reminder about us as a committee directing staff to make sure our I's were crossed and our I's were dotted and T's were crossed. And then also just a reminder as to what model it was we chose. The council chose in the previous term, whether it was the Auditor General model or the internal Auditor General, just so that the public and members are very clear as to why this charter was updated.
Thank you very much, Darren.
Sorry, Joe. Mr. Chair, the CEO wished to respond on that.
Okay, CEO Barrett, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Chair. So I'm happy to hear from legal and as well as the audit as well, but from a friendly reminder perspective, the last term of council considered an Auditor General model versus the internal audit model that we have currently. That was discussed in council. The last term selected to continue on with the internal audit model that we have now. this term of council, it was discovered that some of the policies, including internal audit charter, didn't necessarily align with some of the other bylaws and policies in place to reflect that internal audit function. So there was an audit committee meeting, I believe maybe in December, end of last year, where staff received direction subject to a new director of audit coming on board to review the policies and align them together to reflect the current model, and that is the director internal audit model. And so that was held off for Sunny and her team to review and analyze in consultation with legal. And that has brought us to this point in terms of ensuring the alignment of the internal audit charter with our other policies, bylaws, and municipal legislation. So I think I'll leave it high level like that, and if Joe or Diana Seuss is on the line, or if Sunny want to comment further. But that's pretty much a synopsis of, you know, as a municipality, we can't have a foot on the boat and a foot on the dock with respect to the models available. It's either an internal audit function or it's an auditor general function. And so council selected the last term, and we're just making sure that all the policies and bylaws and charters are coloring within the lines of the scope of the model that council has selected.
Okay, thank you very much, C.A. Aubert. Joe Patari, would you like to add something?
Chair, our CAO covered it. I was around when we did the report looking at the AG model versus internal audit, and he covered it very well. So that was the only context I was going to provide, because I don't believe our acting city solicitor was also around for that discussion. So I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Patari. So back to Councillor Santos. Are you satisfied with that explanation? Is there anything further you'd like to hear from staff?
No, I'm totally satisfied. I'm just happy that there is now clarity, and in producing this new charter, regardless of any sort of misunderstandings that were out there before, we now have some clarity in terms of what an alignment in terms of the internal auditor role. And so I'm hoping that we can pass the charter today so that we can make sure we can actually take action on making sure everything is aligned.
Thank you very much, Councillor Santos. Any further comments? I see Abid Zaman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope everybody can hear me. I know I've had some issues with my mic here before. Okay, so I've had the opportunity to review some of the proposed changes to the charter and the terms of reference here over the past weekend, and I've also consulted with some of the other citizen appointees to this committee as well. And I have to state, Mr. Chair, you know, that I think we're a bit concerned with some of the changes that are being proposed here in terms of the charter and the terms of reference. You know, I think there are a few items that we're concerned with, but perhaps I'll use my time here to focus on the one big fundamental change I think that's particularly concerning to myself, and I think I speak on behalf of the other citizen appointees as well, and which in our mind goes to the heart of sort of the independence and objectivity of the internal audit function here, and that's in regard to the administrative reporting aspect here. So the charter, as I read it, currently states that the CAO is responsible for the general management of the affairs of the internal audit division, including the appointment, dismissal, and remuneration of the director of internal audit. So I guess maybe just to start off, you know, maybe I'll ask a simple question and request some feedback on this is, how can we expect the internal audit function to remain sort of truly objective and truly independent, you know, in fact and in appearance, when the CAO or management, you know, which is the function that internal audit is supposed to provide oversight of, when the CAO has complete unilateral discretion to appoint, dismiss, set the remuneration of the CAE, you know, set the resources that are dedicated to this group, without even the need to consult with the audit committee? Is that not something that's concerning to the folks who put forward this recommendation, and in particular, the Chief Audit Executive.
So before we attempt to go into that, I'd probably want to consult with legal to see if this is something that we should go in camera. Is legal on?
Hi there. Yes, I am here, Chair. Yes, I would be happy to provide some legal advice on this point, and I would recommend that if we were to do that, that we would go into closed.
So, Mr. Zaman, are you okay with, in terms of answering your questions, as our legal believes it should be in camera? So we can take a pause for 10 minutes, and then after everyone has the information, the dial number, so we can address this issue in camera. Is that okay with you, Mr. Zaman?
I'm happy to move forward as per legal's recommendations, yes.
Okay, so City Clerk, in 10 minutes, I'll follow your guidance.
So through you, Mr. Chair, if the will is for committee to go into closed session now, we'll need to pass a motion in public to go into closed session to deal with advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for such purpose. I just want to get clarification from the acting city solicitor. Is there any other reason, or that's the reason that we're going into closed session?
The reasons would be solicitor-client advice and potentially matters that relate to pending litigation.
Okay, thank you. So then the reasons for going in would be litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, as well as advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for such purpose. So, Mr. Chair, we'll take a vote on that in public to go into closed session. If that carries, then committee will recess for 10 minutes, and we will reconvene with the audio conference for closed session.
Yeah, and members of committee, I think it would be probably prudent that we do this now. I was going to wait till the end. We can go through the reports, but as it's only one item, I think probably would be prudent that we address this item now and then have to come back and finish off the rest of the report. Is that okay, unless anyone has any objection?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do see Councillor Bowman has chatted, but it's on the private chat to myself, so I think he'd like to make a comment on a bid's comments, but I don't know if those would be in closed session or not, Councillor Bowman.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Bowman.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I will speak on this in closed session because I'll just leave it for closed session.
Okay, so then we have a motion by Mr. Zaman to go into closed session, and all in favor? I mean, anyone opposed? No? Okay, so in 10 minutes, I remember the instructions were sent to you, and we'll see you in closed session in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just to clarify before we go into closed, there is another item on the agenda in closed session. Is the intent just to deal with this one item or to also deal with
No, we would deal with both items, I think, now.
So then through you, Mr. Chair, we then would also be dealing with item 11.1, which is the security of the property of the municipality or local board.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay. So we are ready to start in open session, and Peter, are ready to go, and you will state that?
Yes, we can, if we're starting right now, so through you, Mr. Chair, to members of committee and members of the public, there were two items that the committee moved in closed session for. The first was in regard to item 6.1 on the internal audit charter, and the reason to go into closed session was for solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for such purpose, and it was stated in open session before we moved into closed session that it also included litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. In fact, that is not a reason for going into closed session on that item, so I wish to clarify that, so the minutes will show it's just for advice subject to solicitor-client privilege. In regard to that matter, the matter was considered in closed session, advice was received, and the matter was considered and no direction was given. The second item that was considered in closed session is item 11.1, which is in regard to the security of the property of the corporation. That matter was considered and no direction was given. Mr. Chair, that's the report out for closed session.
Okay, thank you very much, City Clerk. So Councillor Bowman is first in line to address his questions. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to defer this item so that we can have a full and wholesome discussion with all of Audit Committee.
So
Okay, so
through you, Mr.
yeah,
Chair.
go
if a
ahead,
def-
City Clerk.
If a deferral motion is moved, it is non-debatable, and just for information, it'd be deferred presumably to the next meeting, which right now is scheduled for September 8th.
Okay, so we have a deferral on the floor. So now speaking to the deferral, Councillor Santos.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, a deferral motion is not debatable, so there is no debate on it.
My apologies. Okay, so then I'll hand it City Clerk in terms of the vote. I believe it's if there's anyone who objects, speaks to it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we have a motion of deferral moved by Councillor Bowman. Anyone opposed? Okay, so that deferral carries. We'll go on to our next item. Do any members have any questions or comments regarding item 6.2 regarding the 2019 annual report?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Oh,
I
Councillor
do,
Bowman?
Councillor. Yeah,
Yep,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
I don't know how we adjust the report. The sentence that I read out prior to us going into closed session is actually in that report on page 6.2-6. So I don't know if that needs to be amended now that the official vote on the previous item is deferred. It mentions the charter, acceptance of the charter, which we haven't done yet.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so this report is a point in time, and there is an existing charter. It's fine as is. That would be my advice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I believe we have a motion moved by Councillor Dillon. Anyone opposed? Okay, carried. Item 6.3, status of management action plans. Do any members have any questions or comments? Just a reminder, please use your chat function to add your name to the speakers list. See none. So we have staff report status of management action plans, March 31st, 2020, moved by Councillor Bowman. Anyone opposed? Okay, carried. We go on to item 6.4, corporate fraud prevention hotline update. Do any members have any questions or comments? Yes, Abid, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I wanted to thank Internal Audit for the update that they've provided on the fraud hotline here as well. So we do get this fraud hotline update at every audit committee meeting, if memory serves me correctly. And I think it's something, it's a very useful initiative for the city that was started, it's my understanding a couple of years ago. But when I am taking a look at these reports, something that I usually find missing or something that I'm actually curious about when I take a look at these reports every quarter are certain details around which departments perhaps within the city that the reports relate to, and essentially what was the final disposition of the closed reports in particular. So I have a couple of comments and questions, and maybe I can just put those out there for the appropriate person to address. The first comment or the first question I have here is, I think it might be valuable to note in the quarterly update, the department of the city that was the subject of a closed report. And in particular, even more so, I think it would be good to know what the final disposition of each closed report was. So for example, there was no merit to a particular complaint, or assets were recovered, or a warning was given to somebody. I think having those kind of details would allow the audit committee to better sort of assess the utility of this hotline, and also provide, I think, in my thinking, provide some big picture insights on whether there are particular departments or areas that have concerns, and perhaps, internal audit may want to scope those into their future audit plans as well. Now, having said that, I can certainly appreciate that there might be details within the reports that are obviously not shareable in a public forum, may contain personal and private information. So I'm not suggesting that we go into those details, but just having a high level sense of what the disposition of the closed reports was, I think would be useful. So what's my ask here, what's my request here is, if internal audit can sort of commit to providing more details in regard to the departments and or the final disposition in the reports, that would be useful. And just following on to that, the second request I would have is, as I reviewed this report in particular, I noted, there were a number of items that were delayed due to COVID, for a few months in this update report. Could I request for internal audit to commit to providing us an update at the next audit committee? Not just about reports that come through, not just about reports that come through in the next quarter, but also around what was the final disposition of these reports that are currently open as well. If internal audit can comment on those two particular things. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Everybody hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Sunny.
Yes, very valid points, well taken.
Sunny,
So going
sorry,
forward
Sunny,
in the
Sunny,
closed
you
session.
could turn off your microphone on your computer, please.
Valid point, well taken. Thank you so much. And going forward in the closed session, we will give you enough detail. And yes, we do have the plan, and we take them very seriously, and we follow through independently. And why I said some of them are delayed COVID-19, because we just didn't want to interview people and say it's done and closed. We wanted to see the solid proofs behind. So we are working on them, but because of we did not get all the documentation, so we are keeping them open, but I will provide the detailed explanation next audit committee for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that would be very appreciated. And, ideally, if we can get a sense of some dispositions there as well, final dispositions on those reports, that would be useful. Just one question, I was thinking about, could you remind me of the protections that whistleblowers have in regard to the hotline? And in general at the city of Brampton as well? Are there specific rules against reprisals against whistleblowers?
Can you repeat that question, please?
So my question was if there are any protections that are in place for the employees or other people who report through this hotline in terms of reprisals against whistleblowers. What kind of protections are in place for whistleblowers?
Whistleblower is a confidential service managed by a third party. It's open to all our employees. So they can go in and record a complaint, but they cannot review the complaints. Only 3 people in the company have access to review the reports, and they are all 3 from internal audit. So we delegate between each other who is responsible. None of the employees can review the complaints, but all the employees have access to record a complaint.
Okay, I appreciate that. I guess I'm not sure if anybody else, maybe perhaps from legal as well, may have some input on if there are any laws within the city that protect whistleblowers from any reprisals. And maybe this can be addressed at a future meeting as well. It doesn't need to be addressed now, but I was just curious about if there are any protections for whistleblowers in place.
So sorry, through the chair, perhaps I can assist. Yeah, the policy that is in place with respect to the fraud hotline does contain protections for whistleblowers, that there shall be no reprisals.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. No further speakers. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman that the report titled Corporate Fraud Prevention Hotline Update to the Audit Committee meeting of June 16th be received. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. There are no objections, so the motion carries. Item 6.5, staff report regarding the purchasing card governance and transaction review audit. Again, I remind folks, use their chat function to add your name to the speakers list. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, no. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Singh to approve the report recommendations that the report titled Purchasing Card Governance and Transaction Review Audit to the Audit Committee meeting of June 16th, 2020 be received. And is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. There are no objections, so the motion carries. 6.6 staff report regarding IT asset management, end user computing audit. Our next, do any members have any questions or comments? No, so we have a motion moved by Rishi Jain. Are there any objections to this motion? No. Okay, so there are no objections, so the motion carries. We move on to 6.7, a staff report regarding the Rose Theatre audit. Any questions or comments? No, then I have a motion moved by Abid Zaman that the report titled Rose Theatre Audit to the Audit Committee meeting of June 16th be received. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Thank you. There are no objections, so the motion carries. We move on to item 7.1, procurement options, external audit services.
To the chair, this is Dave Sutton, Councillor.
Yes.
Yeah, I just, staff are seeking direction regarding the next appointment of the auditors. The current contract with KPMG ends in November of this year. And we were just seeing if there's a preference with Audit Committee, whether they prefer to go to competitive procurement or whether they want to reappoint KPMG through direct negotiation. So it's really a preference as to which direction the Audit Committee wants to take.
Okay, do any members of the committee question Councillor Bowman?
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Chair. Dave, what's the value of that? Is there a value or a dollar figure on what we have spent with KPMG?
So annually, we spend approximately $130,000 a year.
Okay, so does that dictate that we have to go to a competitive bid process?
No, actually, under the procurement bylaw, there is an exception for accounting services. So under section 2.4 Schedule D, accountants are excluded from the purchasing bylaw. So really, it's a decision that Audit Committee can make whether we do go for competitive procurement or you just go through a direct negotiation process. Competitive procurement would be an open and transparent process. Obviously, it would ensure the city is obtaining the best value for services. However, if Audit Committee is satisfied with the relationship and the value that KPMG has been bringing to the city, they could opt to go in that direction as well. We would recommend a minimum 3-year contract period ending in November 23rd, which would complete the financial statements for the year ending 2022, which would align with the end of the term of council.
Okay, so Dave, these KPMG audits, they would include the audit on our budget items as well as audits on like we've had a couple of other audits this year on various areas of the company. So this would be inclusive of all of those?
No, through the chair, it would not. It would mostly be just tied to the year-end audit. There are times when there are certain questions that come up throughout the term of council and through the different calendar years, which may be responded to by the auditors at no cost. However, there may be times where there are separate individual audits that are required, and those do come at a cost.
Okay, well, I'm in favor of a competitive bid process. As you mentioned, Dave, it's open, it's transparent. Even if we're satisfied with the job KPMG is doing, I think that this would be far more transparent to everybody if we had an open process. But I'll hear what everybody else says. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Rishi Jain?
Thank you. Through the chair, I would agree with Councillor Bowman's sentiments around a open competitive process. I noted that the last time there was a competitive process was 2013, and although the relationship with KPMG has been positive from my perspective, I think just having that open process provides that transparency and removes any perception even of bias there.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just to remind everyone, and I'm not sure if everyone has a history, but KPMG has been the city auditor for the last 30 years. But I do agree. Sorry, I'm taking a liberty as the chair, that we certainly always want to go to a competitive process. With that said, back to David Sutton. Has this been standard that we've used KPMG consistently, but has it been through competitive, or is it just because of the historical relationship?
Through the chair or to the chair, it's been a combination of both. There have been competitive procurements over the past 30 years, as well as extensions to the appointments up to the maximum 5-year period.
So do you need a motion from us today to, it seems from the comments that we do have, we would like to see a competitive process. Do you need an official motion?
I think that would be appreciated if we could have that in a motion.
So through you,
Councillor Bowman, yeah, go ahead, City Clerk.
Mr. Chair, the motion could be, if it's moved by a councillor, a member, is that the chief purchasing official be requested to initiate a competitive procurement process for external audit services for the city of Brampton.
Okay, and then I believe I see here moved by Councillor Santos. That was the original one, but I believe it was Councillor Bowman who moved the competitive process aspect. So are these separate motions, or Councillor Santos, do you want to do it in conjunction with Councillor Bowman? Okay.
Sorry,
so,
I'm here. I'm happy to proceed as it is right now.
Okay, so Councillor Bowman, maybe I'll just add your name to the motion moved by Councillor Santos and yourself then?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Santos and Councillor Bowman that the report titled Procurement Options External Audit Services to the Audit Committee of June 16, 2020 be received, and that the Chief Purchasing Official be requested to initiate a competitive bid process. Is there anyone that opposes this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Okay, there are no objections, so the motion carries. We move on to item 9. Our next item is member question period. Are there any questions from members? No, we'll move on. Public question period. So I'll move it over to City Clerk. Has there anyone sent in any questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no questions have been received.
Okay. So I believe we dealt with those items, and I believe that we are at adjournment. So our last item of business is item 12, adjournment, and moved by Abid Zamin, and that the committee do now adjourn to meet again on September 8th at 9:30 or at the call of the chair. Anyone opposed? No, there are no objections, so the meeting is adjourned. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and practice physical distancing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. This meeting is now adjourned. So